Hey everybody, this is Perch. All right. So I I really want to do a good review, a nice, happy, positive video. I really, really do. But that is not the case for what I'm about to go into. So spoilers, Rebel Moon Part One and Part Two is like Rebel Moon Part Two Scar Giver. Is that I'm going off memory here. Normally, if I was to do a proper review, I'd type up notes and I'd have bullet points to go through and I'd give you like a play by play. If it was a professional channel, and it's not, that's what I would do, but it's not. So we're going to get into Rebel Moon, Part One, Part Two. This is Zack Snyder, who apparently pitched this idea or the initial story concept to Disney for inclusion into their Star Wars universe. And Disney's like, no, thank you. We're doing Boba Fett, and we've got a good handle on quality. And so Zack Snyder freed himself up to do Rebel Moon, and Netflix was quick to give him some money, and that's how we got to where we are. The challenge in all this is that Rebel Moon is bad. So I watched both these movies. I deliberately, or you know what, I take it back. That sounds like I've been thinking this through. I have not. I watched Rebel Moon 1 and 2 at the same time, meaning I delayed watching Rebel Moon 1 for quite a while, for several months, before eventually getting around to Rebel Moon 2. So I watched these movies at the same time. And I think the big takeaway here, and maybe the big lesson, is people are desperate for new franchises. We've kind of sucked the existing ones to death. We've had even the stuff that wasn't at the same level. I mean, Star Wars was the shit for a long period of time for anyone who was a kid, anyone who grew up in the 70s and 80s. Star Wars was as good as it gets in terms of a brand. It was the sterling class, grade A brand that you went around. And then you had your Transformers, you had your G.I. Joe, you had some of these others. And then, if you were old enough, you were into like Alien and Predator and Terminator and stuff like that. And you could even maybe get into the horror genre of the Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. But what happened in the horror genre is they burned those through quickly. Meaning, you very, very rapidly, they came to a conclusion that these properties didn't need to necessarily be protected, so they didn't. And, it's easy enough to vomit out, multiple other franchises and things there. And the quality of these things, I mean, you got like Jason in Space, which is a clear indication that nobody knew what the fuck they were doing. And, we had given up on any kind of sense of what this property was going to be. But it took a little bit longer for Star Wars. We had the prequel trilogy, which was not great, but silly us, little did we know that was going to be the highlight of the Star Wars multiverse, was going to be the prequel trilogy. But anyway, we've continued to dig and dig and dig, and Disney Plus comes out, and it's got to have content, and they desperately need to find something to put on that channel. So they've mined it to death, is kind of the point. And so now here we are, several years later, and with all these properties exhausted, we've rebooted the Terminator universe like how many times now? Like there's just not more that you can do. And so the people, the fan base out there is desperate to have something new to watch. And so something like Rebel Moon gets some attention because it's a known director. Some big money is going into it. There's this perception that Netflix, will keep things going if it's reasonably popular, because they have in the past. And so we're going to make this sprawling new sci-fi series with some decent money behind it and some decent attention behind it, and that's going to be Rebel Moon. The problem in all this is that when you watch these movies as a review, you can't help but feel like you're watching Star Wars: A New Hope, because you are. There is a distant planet. The Empire shows up. This isn't beat for beat Star Wars, as a lot of Snyder fans have told me at different times, but there's enough elements here to suggest it really is the same kind of thing. There was no surprise, right down to the fact that one of the characters betrays the other characters, and you can see this coming, 50 miles away, but it's still played out. The other challenge is the people who are acting in this movie often felt like they were reading their lines for the first time while they're being filmed. So there was very, very little energy or momentum or excitement on any of this. It was just, I am on a planet. The Empire is bad. The bad Empire characters are gonna be mean. We should stop them. I will, get a ragtag bunch of outlaws, and we will be able to somehow put an end to this nefarious plot. Like there was no sense of urgency in all this. Part of this movie has been compared to it's Star Wars mixed with the Seven Samurai or Magnificent Seven, but more the Seven Samurai. And so they go and they collect these different personalities, but outside of about 90 seconds worth of intro, when the character first appears, there's never anything more with any of these characters. You get this woman who shows up as a space lightsaber wielding witch with a hat called Nemesis, who's got lightsabers and robot hands. And in theory, this is supposed to be some badass character hell-bent on revenge. But, after we introduce her, she fades so far into the background, as do all of the characters that have been assembled, that you don't really even know or understand what's happening. Like nothing after that point seems to matter at all. And that's the problem with this movie is really, in the grand scheme of things, nothing matters. It is it's pretty wild. But anyway. The lead characters and the threat. I mean, look. I mean, there's just so many problems with this film, and you want it to not be awful, because, like I said before, you really are hoping for some kind of franchise to emerge out of this thing, but it that's not what this is about, and so I I wind up struggling with this movie because it was 4 hours plus, almost 4.5 hours of nothing. I'm trying not to spoil it here, but look, you can watch this movie and nothing is accomplished. You have this galactic sprawling empire. You have a big bad that is introduced through this movie. You have the character that has been wronged, who is hiding out in the edge rim of the galaxy, who in theory is going to go topple the Empire. You're not going to see any of that. This is basically an entry-level skirmish that you get, and that's it. It doesn't really go any farther than that. The big threat in this movie is fairly quickly, not only killed once, but killed twice. And then you're done. The action sequences range between normal speed, slow motion, and then ultra slow motion for no apparent reason. And in theory, the thing you used to be able to get out of a good Zack Snyder movie or a Zack Snyder movie is the spectacle of kind of the cinematography and what he was doing there. You don't get that here. You just get fairly benign camera tricks and just a lot of boredom. I mean, look, you can go down the list of all the places this movie fucks itself. You have Anthony Hopkins voice a robot character that you get the sense of could be a real badass when unleashed. But if you're waiting for this thing to be unleashed, bad news, it's never unleashed. It's not entirely fair. In the second movie, it picks up a gun and shoots a couple people. But still, it has less of an impact to the movie than guys who dig a tunnel and throw a random grenade at things. Like this movie is so absolutely terrible in establishing any kind of plot or semblance of anything. It's shit. And the shame of it is, like I mentioned, you're shooting for an audience, a group of people who really want to watch exciting sci-fi, who are desperate for anything that gives them some level of world building and hope. And you can't like even a passable movie will be legendary. But you can't even give that. Um, it's I don't know. It's a very weird experiment because a lot of money went into this. There's a lot of opportunity went into this to create a spectacle, to create a sci-fi franchise that could be something. But in the end, you're better off going and digging up the old 1990s movie Fortress, which had a couple sequels, because that will be more satisfying than anything you're going to get here. Rebel Moon is just hollow on any level, and I mean the where I watch these films, I watch both these films on a plane crossing the Atlantic, one going one direction, one going the other direction. And that was about as optimal of a way to watch this movie as you can possibly happen. You're sleep deprived, you're tired, you're stuck on an airplane, you have no entertainment. Rebel Moon is your answer. That is the best way this movie can show up. That's it. Anyway, all right. This was a kind of a non-review, spoiler review, kind of a bunch of different things mixed together. I can certainly go through it in more depth, but at the end of the day, you're watching Star Wars A New Hope, except somehow a little dumber, crossed with The Seven Samurai, which was also better with the original. And there's no characterization. The acting is poor. And I mean, maybe there's going to be more of these things. I highly doubt it. But who knows? Who knows? There's a comic book of some of this shit if you really want to get into that. So cool. Did any of you enjoy Rebel Moon? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe. And thanks for listening.